1 Samuel 3, verses 1 through 18. Now you'll remember, by way of background, that Samuel's mom was who? Hannah. She prayed for a son. When they would have a son, God blessed her with a son. She promised God that if He'd give her a son, she would give him back into His service. And so, when he was just a little baby, she came through on her promise. She had a baby. She brought it back to the temple and let Eli raise the baby, raised it into a young man, and he served in the temple. Okay, so understand that. Now the boy Samuel was ministering to the Lord before Eli. A word of the Lord was rare in those days. Visions were infrequent. It happened at that time as Eli was lying down in his place, and his eyesight had begun to grow dim, and he could not see well. And the lamp of God had not yet gone out, and Samuel was lying down in the temple of the Lord where the ark of God was, that the Lord called Samuel and said to him, and he said, Here I am. Then he ran to Eli and said, Here I am, for you called me. But he said, I did not call, lie down again. So he went away and lay down. The Lord called yet again, Samuel. So Samuel arose and went to Eli and said, Here I am, for you called me. But he answered, I did not call, my son, lie down again. So Samuel did not yet know the Lord, nor had the word of the Lord yet been revealed to him. So the Lord called Samuel again for the third time, and he arose and went to Eli and said, Here I am, for you called me. Then Eli discerned that the Lord was calling the boy. And Eli said to Samuel, Go lie down, and it shall be, if he calls you, then you shall say, Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. So Samuel went and lay down in his place. Then the Lord came and stood. He called as at other times, Samuel, Samuel. And Samuel said, Speak, for your servant is listening. The Lord said to Samuel, Behold, I am about to do a thing in Israel at which both ears of everyone who hears it will tingle. And in that day I will carry out against Eli all that I have spoken concerning his house from beginning to end. For I have told him that I am about to judge his house forever for the iniquity which he knew, because his sons brought a curse on themselves, and he did not rebuke them. Therefore I have sworn to the house of Eli that the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be atoned for by sacrifice or offering forever. So Samuel lay down until morning. Excuse me. Then he opened the doors of the house of the Lord, but Samuel was afraid to tell the vision to Eli. Then Eli called Samuel and said, Samuel, my son. He said, Here I am. He said, What is the word that the Lord has spoken to you? Please do not hide it from me. May God do to you, and more also, if you hide anything from me, of all the words that he has spoken to you. So Samuel told him everything and hid nothing from him. And he said, It is the Lord. Let him do what seems good to him. Okay, kind of a long passage, but you get the gist there, right? Wake Samuel up 3 times. Samuel says he didn't know the Lord. So he wasn't really expecting this. There hadn't been any messages from the Lord in a long time. And so he just naturally assumes that it's Eli. Goes in there 3 times. Finally, Eli gets it. Says, Hey, it happens again. Say, Here I am. Speak to me. And so Eli figured it out. He knew it was God. So sure enough, it happened again. Samuel did what he said, and God spoke to him. And he said, I'm going to do all these terrible things to Eli's family because his sons did a bunch of bad stuff, and Eli didn't get on about it. He just kind of looked the other way and let it go. So the next morning, Eli comes in there and says, Hey, tell me what he said. Tell me what he said. He was kind of scared too. He did it anyway. He said, just lay it on me. Just tell it straight. So Samuel did. Told him everything that God had said. And Eli said, You know what? God can do whatever he wants because he's good. He'll do the right thing. Whatever he says is right. Now, that's an interesting story. It's kind of different. But three things just popped out at me that I think we could use as examples. The first one, I don't know that it's really meant to be taken this way, but it just kind of stood out, and that was back in verse 7. And it said, Now Samuel did not know the Lord, nor had the word of the Lord yet been revealed to him. That just kind of popped out at me. Something that we need to be careful about. Keep in mind that Samuel had been working in the temple with the priest since he was a baby. Almost since he was born. Now, I don't know kid, I guess, at this point. As a matter of fact, Samuel, if you read it, he slept where the Ark of the Covenant was. Which, if you remember anything about that, that's a whole, man, that's a pretty neat thing there. That was the presence of God. And you had to be careful being in His presence, because it was so holy. If you touched it, you would die. So here's this guy who, from a baby, had grown up in the presence of God, and serving in the temple, slept near the Ark of the Covenant, and yet didn't know God. You see where I'm going with this? I would hate for anybody to say that about you. That you grew up in a Christian home, that you went to church, that you went to a Christian school for however many years, and yet you didn't know God. Now, I'm not saying this is the way this was intended for Samuel. It's a different circumstance. The point I want to make is, it just kind of triggered something in my mind. Can you be around God and not know God? I think it happens all the time. You got to be careful about that. Don't just, know about God. You've got to know God. I think it's a danger in a Christian school that we assume, proximity will save you. Hey, I'm around it a lot, so it must rub off on me somehow. By osmosis, spirituality seeps into my soul, and that's not the way it works. You got to be careful about that. The second thing I just found interesting in 3:13, did you hear why Eli was in trouble? He wasn't in trouble because he had done anything bad, was he? He wasn't even in trouble because his kids had done something bad. Can't trade kids, right? He was in trouble because he didn't call them on it. He let it slide. Bad stuff happened. Keep reading. He let it slide. He overlooked it. And he knew better. I mean, he was the priest, for crying out loud. He was the prophet. But he overlooked it. God will not overlook sin, and He won't tolerate people who overlook sin. I think that's the second warning we got. Let's say we do develop this relationship with God. We don't just know about God, but we actually are able to cultivate that spiritual relationship so that we know God, and we're a Christian, and we're following God, and we're in God's will. If we refuse to recognize sin for what it is and get rid of it or challenge it, we're on the hot seat. We're going to be accountable for that. And that's not an easy thing to do, because it might be somebody you love. It might be your friend. It might be the coolest guy in class. It might be whatever. It might be everybody but you. You're going to stand out like a sore thumb. Can't let sin slide. God doesn't. God can't be around it. He can't tolerate it. And He won't approve of those who tolerate it. So that's the second thing I think we pull out of this. We got a responsibility to your classmates, to your school, to the kids in the younger grades. You're blazing the trail. I'm proud of the kind of atmosphere that we've got. I've got younger kids of my own, and little bit of us. I got a first grader. She's growing up in this school, and I'm proud of the kind of examples that we've got here. I think we can do better. Can't we all? But I think we've got a good environment. But we've got to be careful, because we have a responsibility to each other, to hold each other accountable. We've got a responsibility to those that are coming after us to make sure that we set the right examples. So we can't tolerate sin. The last thing I want to look at, those two are kind of negative. The last one's kind of positive. The last verse that we read, 3:18. All this bad stuff starts coming down. Eli's told, hey, it's going to be bad on you. Things are bad. Eli says, it is the Lord. Let him do what seems good to him. Samuel was kind of scared to tell Eli what the deal was, wasn't he? He's afraid, nobody likes to hear bad news. Nobody wants to give bad news.